I thought love meant giving someone the best version of yourself, staying loyal, protecting what you have. But life has a twisted sense of humor, because while I was busy being the best husband I could be, my wife was busy treating hotel rooms like her personal gym with another man. She was careful, smart, the kind of woman who could hide a crime scene and still sleep next to the detective. But no one is perfect. And arrogance? It always leads to her mistake. She forgot one thing. I notice everything. It started a month before her sister's wedding. She had been acting strange, not the usual something's wrong kind of strange, but the kind that makes a man's instincts tingle. More time on her phone, more gym sessions at odd hours, more perfume, but not for me. Then, one night, I caught a detail so small that most men would have ignored it. A single number on our Uber history. Not mine, not hers. A random ride from a hotel I had never been to at 2:43 a.m. Now, I don't believe in coincidences. People who believe in coincidences get played for fools. So I did what any man with self-respect would do. I investigated. Quietly. Precisely. No confrontation. No accusations. Just patience. I let her keep thinking she was in control. I let her keep up the act, smiling, kissing me, calling me my love with the same mouth that whispered to another man in the dark. Then I found him. His name was Mark, a gym trainer. Younger than me, but not by much. Muscles, tattoos, the usual cliche. The kind of man who thinks a strong jawline makes him untouchable. I watched from the shadows as he kissed my wife in the parking lot after her late-night yoga. I followed them, watched them check into the same hotel, room 214, and I waited. Most men, upon seeing that, would have stormed in. They would have screamed, thrown punches, demanded answers they already knew. But I am not most men. I am a man who understands that true revenge is not about anger, it's about patience. I walked away that night, but not because I was weak. No, I walked away because I needed time. Time to prepare. Time to turn this betrayal into something far more satisfying than a drunken confrontation in a hotel lobby. I went home, poured myself a drink, and started planning. That's when I saw the wedding invitation on the table. Emma's sister, Laura, was getting married in 4 weeks. A grand event. Family, friends, colleagues, everyone who mattered in her life would be there. The perfect stage. The perfect audience. And suddenly, the anger inside me melted into something else. Cold, calculating amusement. Because I realized something that night. Emma didn't just cheat on me. She underestimated me. And that would be her downfall. Looking back, my life was almost too perfect. The kind of perfection that, in hindsight, feels artificial, like a beautiful painting hiding a crack in the canvas. I had everything a man could ask for. A stable career, a home that felt warm the moment I walked through the door, and a wife who, by all appearances, adored me. We had our little routines, the kind that made life feel steady, predictable. Breakfast together before work, she always made coffee, I always made toast. Weekends spent on lazy drives, stopping at small diners where we'd share a plate of pancakes, pretending we were discovering them for the first time. She would lean her head against my shoulder in the car, humming softly to whatever song played on the radio. It was the kind of love story you'd see in a movie, the kind that makes you believe you're one of the lucky ones. There were small things, though. Things I ignored because love makes you dismiss details that don't fit the picture in your head. Like how, over the last few months, she had started checking her phone more often but turning the screen away when I walked by. How she started working out more, but not with me, despite always telling me before that she loved when we trained together. How sometimes, in the middle of a conversation, her mind would drift somewhere else, and when I asked what she was thinking about, she would just smile and say, "Nothing, just tired." I should have known then. Not because these were obvious signs, but because I knew my wife. Or at least, I thought I did. We had been married for 6 years. The kind of marriage where you reach that stage of comfort that feels unshakable. We weren't in the honeymoon phase anymore, but we weren't struggling either. It was a good life, one that made other people envious. Friends would always joke about how lucky I was, how Emma was the perfect wife. And I believed it. Because why wouldn't I? She was beautiful in that effortless way that made men turn their heads, but I never felt insecure. I trusted her. I never once thought she would be the kind of woman who would betray a man who had given her everything. I remember the little moments the most. The way she would wrap her arms around me when I was cooking, resting her chin on my shoulder. The way she would roll her eyes when I teased her about her obsession with crime documentaries, yet still make me sit through hours of them. The way she would grab my hand and squeeze it 3 times, our little silent code for, I love you. It was the kind of marriage that felt unbreakable. But looking back, I see the cracks now. I see the way she had started dressing differently, not for me, but for someone else. I see the way her laughter had become more performative, like she was playing a role. I see the way her kisses, once lingering and full of meaning, had become brief, routine gestures. The truth is, I had been living in an illusion. And the worst part? I was happy in it. That's the cruel thing about betrayal. It doesn't just destroy the present, it poisons every good memory that came before it. It turns years of love into a lie, makes you question every moment you once held sacred. But back then, before I knew the truth, I was just another man who thought he had it all. And that's what made the fall so satisfying. Because when you think you're untouchable, when you think your world is solid, watching it shatter is the most brutal kind of justice. It was a Tuesday evening, nothing special, just another night in what I thought was my normal life. Emma was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of something that smelled like garlic and basil, humming along to the soft jazz she always played when she cooked. I was sitting at the dining table, answering a few late emails, when her phone vibrated on the counter. A quick buzz, nothing alarming. But it was the way she reacted that made my stomach tighten. She froze. Just for a second, just long enough for me to notice. Then, too quickly, she reached for the phone, turned the screen away, and silenced it. Who was that? I asked casually, not looking up from my laptop. Oh, just Laura, she answered too quickly. Her voice was light, but her fingers gripped the phone too tightly, like she was bracing for something. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because 5 minutes later, her phone vibrated again. And this time, I saw the name M. She didn't notice that I had seen it. She picked up the phone, turned her back to me, and lowered her voice. Hey, yeah, I can't talk right now. No, not yet. I will later. A soft laugh. A pause. Okay, bye. She turned back around, smiling like nothing had happened. Sorry, Laura needed help with some wedding stuff. I stared at her. The lie was smooth, effortless. But there was one problem. Laura had called me earlier that day. We had talked for 20 minutes about the wedding, her stress over the seating chart, and how Emma had been so busy lately that she hadn't been much help. Emma didn't know I knew that. Something cold settled in my chest. I wasn't a paranoid man. I had never been the jealous type. But I wasn't stupid either. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Confrontation is emotional. Emotional men make mistakes. Instead, I just nodded, watching her carefully. She was too relaxed now, too sure of herself. Whatever she was hiding, she thought she had gotten away with it. That's what made me even more certain. Something was wrong. For the rest of the night, I watched her differently. The way she kept her phone close, angling it away when she checked it. The way she seemed distracted, nodding at my words but not really listening. And later, when we lay in bed, she turned away from me just a little too quickly, claiming she was tired. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, my mind working through the details. One message. One hushed phone call. One small, careless lie. Individually, they were nothing. But together, they were the first crack in the perfect picture. And I knew, deep down, that once a crack appears, it only gets bigger. I had always believed that trust was a choice. You choose to believe in the person you love, to accept their words as truth, to dismiss the little inconsistencies because love is supposed to be stronger than doubt. But trust is also a fragile thing. Once a seed of suspicion is planted, it grows fast. It spreads, infecting every memory, every moment, until you start seeing ghosts where there were once only shadows. I wasn't imagining things. That phone call was real. The lie was real. And if there was one thing I refused to be in this life, it was a fool. So I started paying attention. Really paying attention. The first thing I noticed was the phone. It was always nearby now. Never left unattended like before. She used to leave it on the nightstand when she went to shower. Now, it went with her. She used to charge it in the kitchen overnight. Now, it stayed under her pillow. And one morning, when I reached for it casually, pretending I wanted to check the weather, I saw it. The passcode had changed. I didn't say anything. I just handed it back to her and watched the way she avoided my eyes. Security update, she said quickly, stuffing it into her pocket. I read that people get hacked all the time now. A reasonable excuse. A logical explanation. But I didn't believe a single word. Then there were the sudden late nights. Emma had never been the type to stay at work longer than necessary. She hated overtime. always complaining about how corporate life was sucking the soul out of her. But now she had projects, meetings, deadlines that just couldn't wait. Twice in 1 week, she came home hours later than usual, her excuses rehearsed but delivered with just enough fake exasperation to sound real. "It's just been so crazy at work," she sighed one night, kicking off her heels and flopping onto the couch. "I swear, if they don't hire another assistant soon, I might actually lose my mind." She looked tired, but not the right kind of tired. Not the tired of a woman who had been sitting in meetings all day. I watched her closely. "Who was there with you?" She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. A hesitation so small that most people wouldn't notice it. But I did. "Oh, just the usual team," she said, waving a hand. "You don't know them. Lies always contain a sliver of truth. The trick is finding the sliver and pulling on the thread until the whole thing unravels." So I started testing her. One night, she told me she was meeting Laura for dinner. Just a simple sister's night out, nothing special. I smiled, kissed her on the cheek, and let her walk out the door. Then I called Laura. "Hey, Emma just left," I said casually. "Where are you two going?" A pause. Too long. Then, she didn't tell you?" "No, just that it was a dinner with you." Another pause. Then Laura sighed. "She actually canceled on me last minute. Said she had to stay late at work." I felt my pulse slow, steady. So that was the game. I didn't tell Laura the truth. I didn't accuse Emma when she came home later that night, smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't hers. I just smiled, listened to her fake story about overpriced sushi and a hilarious waiter, and kissed her like nothing had changed. Because I needed more. I needed something undeniable. So I started tracking her. It was easier than she would have ever guessed. Emma was careful, but not careful enough. She had left her Uber account logged in on our shared iPad, something she never thought twice about. I checked it the next morning. The last ride she took wasn't to a restaurant. It wasn't to work. It was to a hotel. Room 214. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling something inside me settle. Not break, not shatter, just settle. Because now I knew. And knowing meant I could plan. People always say they'd rather know the truth, no matter how painful it is. That ignorance is worse than betrayal. But that's a lie. Because the truth doesn't just hurt, it changes you. It twists something inside you, poisons the way you see the world. The moment I saw the evidence, I felt it, the shift. The death of the man I was before. It happened on a Saturday. Emma had left early for another meeting. I didn't ask questions anymore. I didn't need to. I had learned the art of patience. I waited until she was gone. Then I sat down with the iPad, my heartbeat steady, my mind already detached. I wasn't searching for answers anymore. I was collecting proof. The Uber history had already given me the location of the hotel. But I needed more. Something undeniable. Something she couldn't talk her way out of. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her laptop. She was careful with her phone, always keeping it locked. But her laptop? That was different. She used it for work, for emails, for browsing. And she never logged out of her accounts. It didn't take long. A hidden folder. A name so innocent that she must have thought I'd never check. Work notes. Inside, I found everything. Screenshots of messages. Hotel reservations. Photos. And then, the final blow, a video. I clicked on it. Already numb. Already knowing what I was about to see. Emma, in a dimly lit hotel room. Laughing. Her hair slightly messy. Her eyes bright with something I hadn't seen in a long time. A man's voice in the background. Low, teasing. Then he appeared. Mark. The gym trainer. The man who had been screwing my wife while I made her breakfast every morning. She kissed him. Passionately. The kind of kiss she used to give me before she started turning away in bed. Then her voice, soft, affectionate. God, I wish I could just stay here forever. His chuckle. You could, you know. Just leave him. And then, her answer. A pause. A small sigh. Then, not yet. I need to be smart about it. I closed the laptop. Slowly. Carefully. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. There was no explosion of rage. No impulsive need to throw something. There was only silence. A cold, calculated silence. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning. Plotting. Biding her time. I had spent years believing in a woman who was already halfway out the door, waiting for the right moment to leave with everything. I exhaled, leaning back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. It was almost funny. Almost. Because now I had everything I needed. And the best part? She had no idea. She still thought she was in control. She still thought she was winning. But she had forgotten one thing. A man like me never loses. I don't beg. I don't plead. I destroy. I sat in silence for a long time, letting the weight of it all settle. No anger, no outbursts, just pure, calculated thought. Emma had played her game well, but she had made one fatal mistake. She thought I was the kind of man who would break. The kind of man who would lash out, get emotional, make a scene. She thought she was playing against a fool. That was her first and last miscalculation. Because I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to confront her with tears in my eyes, demanding explanations she would lie her way through. No, I was going to do something far worse. I was going to make sure that by the time she realized she had lost, it would already be too late. Emma's greatest weakness wasn't her affair. It wasn't even her lies. It was her image, her need to be seen as perfect. She had spent years curating the illusion of the flawless wife, the successful woman, the devoted partner. The wedding coming up? That was her stage, the place where she would shine. Everyone she cared about would be there, her family, her friends, her colleagues. People whose opinions mattered to her. People she had spent years impressing. She had no idea that her own stage was about to become her execution ground. I needed time to perfect the details, but first, I needed to prepare the battlefield. I started small. A few discreet conversations with her sister, Laura, dropping subtle hints about Emma's stress lately, how she had seemed distracted. Nothing obvious, just enough to plant a seed. Then, I backed it up with action. A week before the wedding, I accidentally left my laptop open while talking to Laura, making sure she caught a glimpse of an email, one I had written but never sent. It was a drafted message to a lawyer, discussing infidelity clauses in a potential divorce settlement. I closed the screen too quickly, feigning awkwardness. Laura didn't ask, but I saw the look in her eyes. Suspicion. Then, the real work began. I needed evidence, and I needed to control its release. Screenshots of messages, copies of hotel receipts, nothing directly from me, of course. That would be too obvious. Instead, I created a fake email, masked the sender, and scheduled an anonymous delivery to her family, friends, and the wedding guest list. The email contained everything, a polite but brutally honest breakdown of her affair, neatly packaged with undeniable proof. It was set to send at exactly 7:45 p.m. on the night of the wedding reception. The perfect moment. But that wasn't enough. Emma thought she was playing chess with a man still reading the rulebook. I was about to flip the board. A few days before the wedding, I met with her boss. A casual meeting. Nothing formal. Just two men discussing concerns. I had discovered through her emails that her affair partner, Mark, wasn't just some gym trainer. He had been using her company's funds to pay for their little hotel rendezvous. A misused corporate card here, a falsely filed business trip there. Small things, easy to miss, but in the right hands? Devastating. I made sure her boss noticed. Then, I waited. The night of the wedding arrived, and Emma was glowing. She had no idea what was coming. She laughed, mingled, soaked in the admiration of everyone around her. She probably thought she had one. That after the wedding, after some time, she would execute whatever exit plan she had been brewing. And then, at 7:45 p.m., the first phones bust. A ripple of silence spread across the reception hall as people checked their messages. Whispers, eyes widening, gasps, and then Laura storming across the room, shoving her phone in Emma's face. What the hell is this? Emma's smile froze. She barely had time to process it before her boss approached next, his face cold, holding documents I had sent him separately. Not just proof of the affair, but proof of corporate fraud linked to her name. And just like that, her entire world collapsed in a single, perfect moment. She turned to me, eyes wide, pleading. But I just smiled. Because Emma had spent months planning her escape. She just never expected that when she ran, she'd have nothing left. The beauty of a well-executed plan is in its precision. Every detail, every move, carefully placed like a blade waiting to strike at just the right moment. Emma had no idea that while she was playing her little game, I had already built the stage for her downfall. And tonight, in front of everyone she held dear, the curtain was about to rise. The wedding venue was elegant. White tablecloths, soft golden lights, a dance floor filled with people sipping champagne and laughing as the music played. Emma was in her element, moving through the crowd, flashing that practiced smile, The one she used when she wanted people to believe she had the perfect life. She thought she had one. That whatever was going on in my head, I was too weak, too unaware, too afraid to act. She was wrong. At 7:45 p.m., the first phone lit up. Then another. And another. A ripple effect, spreading across the room like wildfire. Conversation stilled. Laughter died mid-sentence. A woman gasped audibly, clutching her husband's arm. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." I watched as people pulled out their phones, scrolling through the email I had scheduled, containing everything. Screenshots of Emma's messages with Mark. Hotel booking confirmations. Even a time-stamped Uber receipt that perfectly aligned with the time she claimed to be working late. I had laid it all out so neatly, so irrefutably, that there wasn't even room for doubt. Laura was the first to break the silence. She stormed across the room, heels clicking sharply against the floor, her phone gripped so tightly I thought she might shatter it. She reached Emma, shoving the screen in her face. "What the hell is this?" Emma blinked, caught completely off guard. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could even form a lie, another voice cut in, her father's. "Emma," he said, his voice dangerously low, "tell me this isn't true." Emma's eyes darted from person to person, realization dawning on her face. The color drained from her skin. She was trapped. There was nowhere to run. No excuse to make. No manipulation smooth enough to get her out of this. Because this wasn't a private conversation she could twist, this was public execution. Then, as if the night couldn't get worse for her, her boss appeared. I had made sure he got his own personal delivery. He held a folder in his hands, the corporate fraud files I had sent him. His expression was a mask of cold professionalism, but his words were a death sentence. "Emma," he said, "we need to have a very serious conversation first thing Monday morning. I suggest you prepare yourself." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Because what could she say? That it wasn't what it looked like? That she had an explanation? No, she knew better. The weight of what was happening crashed over her in full force, and I could see it, the moment her perfect little world collapsed. I let the silence stretch. Let her feel it. Let her watch as people she once held close stepped back, as the whispers turned into outright conversations. Her mother covered her mouth in disbelief. One of her colleagues muttered, "I knew something was off." Finally, she turned to me, desperation in her eyes. "You did this," she breathed, barely above a whisper. I smiled. Slowly. Coldly. "No, Emma," I said, leaning in just enough for only her to hear. "You did this. I just let everyone else see it." And then, without another word, I turned and walked away. Because she wasn't worth another second of my time. Emma's world shattered in slow motion. I can see it in the way her breathing grew shallow, the way her hands trembled as she clutched her phone, scrolling through the evidence, desperate to find a way out. But there was no escape. Every lie she had told, every excuse she had made, every carefully constructed illusion, gone in an instant. The people she once charmed were now staring at her with disgust, murmuring among themselves, shaking their heads. Laura was still demanding an answer, her voice sharp and cutting. "Say something, Emma. Tell me this isn't real." Emma's lips parted, but nothing came. Her father stepped forward, his expression harder than I had ever seen. "You've disgraced yourself," he said, his voice low, controlled. "You've disgraced this family." His words struck deeper than any scream ever could. I saw her flinch, saw the raw panic in her eyes as she turned to her mother, seeking some form of comfort. But even she had taken a step back, her hands clasped together, as if physically distancing herself from the wreckage. Then came the scrambling, the pathetic, frantic grasping for control. She turned to me, her face twisting in something between desperation and feigned innocence. "Please," she whispered, stepping closer. "Let's just talk about this. In private." I met her gaze without a shred of warmth. "We had plenty of time for that, Emma," I said calmly. "You made your choices. Now you live with them." Her mouth opened, then closed. She knew there was nothing she could say to me. Not anymore. But then came the bargaining. "It wasn't like that," she said louder now, turning to the crowd, trying to salvage something. "Mark meant nothing. I wasn't going to leave. It was just a mistake. A mistake." I let the words settle in the air, watched as people exchanged knowing looks. No one believed her. They had seen the proof. They had heard her own words, caught in the messages I had exposed. She wasn't staying with me out of love. She was staying because she was waiting for the right moment to leave on her terms. And now, she had nothing. I folded my hands behind my back, tilting my head slightly. A mistake. I repeated, letting the word drip with cold amusement. Strange, because according to your own messages, it seems you were very calculated about this. Should I read them out loud? Her face drained of color. No, she said quickly. Too late. People were already whispering, recounting the messages they had read, the damning words she couldn't take back. Then came the final blow. Her boss stepped closer, clearing his throat. Emma, he said, his voice all business now. We'll be conducting a full investigation regarding your use of company funds. Expect to hear from HR first thing Monday morning. Her head snapped toward him. No, please, this isn't. But he was already walking away. The realization dawned on her face, horror creeping in as she put the final pieces together. This wasn't just about exposing her. I had destroyed every pillar of stability she thought she had. She had lost her family's respect, her friends' trust, her career. Panic took over. This is a setup, she cried, turning wildly, trying to find someone, anyone, to take her side. He's making me look worse than I am. You have to believe me. No one came to her defense. Laura, once her biggest supporter, just shook her head, her voice laced with quiet betrayal. You did this to yourself. Emma's breathing hitched. Her hands clutched at her dress, fingers curling as if she could physically hold onto the remnants of her old life. Finally, she looked at me one last time, pleading. Please, she whispered, so softly that only I could hear. Don't leave me like this. I let the silence stretch, let her feel the full weight of what she had done. Then, with a slow, deliberate breath, I leaned in just enough for only her to hear. You left me long before I ever left you, I said quietly. Now it's just official. And with that, I turned around and walked away. She was nothing to me now, just another mistake I had corrected. The aftermath of a well-executed plan is often quieter than the explosion itself. The dust settles, the wreckage becomes clear, and those left standing look around, realizing just how much has changed. For Emma, everything had changed. She had built her life on illusions, her reputation, her career, her social circle, each one carefully crafted to maintain the perfect image. And in one night, I had taken all of it away. The next morning, the calls began. Not from me, of course. I had nothing left to say to her, but from her family. Her father, a man of quiet discipline, who had once proudly introduced her as his brilliant daughter, refused to even acknowledge her existence now. I heard from Laura that he told her, in no uncertain terms, that she was an embarrassment to the family, that he would not defend her, that, as far as he was concerned, she had chosen her own destruction. Her mother wasn't much better. A woman who had always doted on appearances, on making sure her daughters were seen as respectable, now had a scandal to deal with, and she wanted nothing to do with it. Emma tried to call her, multiple times, from what I later heard, but each call went unanswered. Her own mother had cut her off. Then came the social fallout. The wedding had been full of people from Emma's life, friends, colleagues, people she had spent years charming. But when the truth came out, when those messages circulated, when people saw for themselves what she had been doing behind closed doors, the shift was immediate. No one wanted to be associated with her. The invitations stopped coming. The group chats that once buzzed with inside jokes and weekend plans suddenly went silent. She tried to salvage it, of course. She reached out to friends, tried to explain, to downplay, to twist the narrative in her favor. But it was too late. The proof was there, and no one respects a liar who gets caught. Then came her job. The investigation into the misuse of company funds didn't take long. A few missing receipts. A few transactions that didn't line up. It wasn't criminal, but it was enough to terminate her contract. No severance. No recommendations. Just a cold, impersonal email confirming what she already knew. She was out. And Mark, the man she had risked everything for, he was the first to abandon her. As soon as her world started collapsing, he disappeared. No calls, no texts. Just gone. Because men like him don't commit. They consume. And once the meal is over, they leave the scraps behind. I never reached out to her. I didn't need to. The last thing I ever heard directly from Emma was a single, desperate email, one I never opened. The subject line said, "Please, can we talk?" I deleted it, because there was nothing left to talk about. As for me, I moved on. Not just in the superficial way, not just dating someone new or flaunting happiness for show. I truly moved on. I thrived. Because that's the real revenge, isn't it? Not just watching your enemy fall, but standing at the top while they remain buried in the wreckage they created. Emma? She lost everything she ever valued. And she did it to herself. That was the most satisfying part of all. Justice isn't always about punishment. It's about balance. About making sure that the person who thought they could walk over you, lie to you, betray you, feels the weight of their own actions. Emma thought she was in control. That she could lie, cheat, and manipulate her way into a perfect exit, leaving me behind like an afterthought. But life doesn't work that way. Actions have consequences. And when you play games with someone who's smarter than you, the only possible outcome is losing. She lost her family. She lost her friends. She lost the life she spent years curating, all because she thought she could outmaneuver me. And the best part? I never had to yell, never had to argue, never had to stoop to her level. I let her destroy herself. All I did was hold up a mirror and let the world see who she really was. And now, I live a life free of her lies. I don't check my phone wondering if there's a secret she's hiding. I don't come home to a woman who smiles at me while planning her next betrayal. I don't waste a second on someone who was never worth it. I walk forward, without regret, without hesitation. Because when you get rid of poison, you don't look back. You breathe deeper. You live better. As for Emma, I imagine she still tells herself it wasn't her fault. That I was cruel, that I overreacted, that I set her up to fail. But at night, when she's alone, scrolling through a phone that no longer buzzes with messages from friends, checking an email inbox with no job offers, staring at a mirror that reflects nothing but her own ruined choices, she knows the truth. She lost, and I won. But tell me, what would you have done? If you were in my place, would you have exposed her like I did? Or would you have walked away quietly, letting karma do the work? Because some people say revenge isn't worth it. That walking away with your dignity is the best form of payback. But here's the thing, sometimes they don't learn unless you teach them. So tell me, was I wrong? Or did she get exactly what she deserved?